She stood at the kitchen island, champagne flute
Babe,
raised
guess
high, her
what?
laughter echoing through their modest suburban home like breaking glass. Elena Martinez had just received the offer of a lifetime, $33 million from Morrison Global to acquire her consulting firm, Elevate. Her designer suit, purchased just last week, caught the afternoon sunlight streaming through their Baltimore windows. Marcus watched from the doorway, laptop bag still slung over his shoulder, fresh from another freelance cybersecurity consultation. He should have felt pride. He should have felt joy. Instead, something cold settled in his stomach as his wife of 7 years celebrated without even glancing his direction. "This is everything I've worked for," Elena said into her phone, her voice carrying that sharp edge of triumph he'd heard more frequently these past 6 months. "Tell Cameron I'll meet him at the Harbor East office in an hour. We need to strategize before the Morrison team arrives tomorrow." Cameron Bennett, her business partner, the name that appeared on her phone at midnight, during dinners, even once during their anniversary weekend in Annapolis. Marcus set his bag down quietly, the gesture invisible to Elena as she paced their living room, already mentally departed from their shared space. The anonymous email had arrived that morning, sent to his work account with a subject line that read simply, "You deserve to know the truth." Marcus had almost deleted it, assuming spam or a phishing attempt. His profession made him cautious of unsolicited messages. But something, perhaps the universe's way of whispering warnings, made him click. The sender identified themselves only as a former Elevate employee, now residing in Newport, Rhode Island, too frightened to reveal their identity, but too conscience-stricken to remain silent. Attached were time-stamped photographs, Elena and Cameron at a Portsmouth, New Hampshire restaurant, their hands intertwined across white tablecloth. Elena and Cameron entering a hotel in Newark, New Jersey, where Elevate's mysterious seed funding had originated. Elena and Cameron on a beach that reverse image search identified as Maui, standing before a property listing sign. Marcus felt the ground shift beneath him, tectonic plates of his reality grinding against each other. 7 years of marriage, of supporting Elena's ambitions, of taking smaller contracts so she could pursue her dream of building a consulting empire. He'd believed in her vision, even when it meant pasta dinners and postponed vacations. Even when it meant watching her pull away, inch by inch, meeting by meeting, until they were roommates who occasionally shared a bed. The email contained more than photographs. It included financial documents, transaction records showing offshore accounts, communications between Elevate and shell corporations that his trained eye immediately flagged as suspicious. "Marcus, are you even listening?" Elena's voice cut through his thoughts. She stood before him now, irritation creasing her perfectly made-up features. "I said we're having dinner with the Morrison Global representatives tomorrow night. Wear your good suit. This is important." He looked at his wife, really looked at her, and saw a stranger wearing Elena's face. When had the transformation completed? When had the woman who used to leave notes in his lunch bag become this polished, distant executive who regarded him as a prop in her success story? "Who's Cameron to you?" The question emerged quietly, almost gently. Elena's eyes flickered, just for a microsecond, before her expression hardened into defensive steel. "My business partner. Why are you asking ridiculous questions on the biggest day of my career?" Her tone carried dismissal, the verbal equivalent of a door closing. Marcus felt something inside him strengthen. His cybersecurity work had taught him to trust patterns, to recognize when systems were compromised. His marriage, he realized with devastating clarity, had been breached long ago. That evening, while Elena celebrated at Harbor East with Cameron and her team, Marcus sat in his home office surrounded by 3 monitors, doing what he did best, following digital breadcrumbs. The anonymous sender had provided access codes, encrypted files, breadcrumbs leading into Elevate's internal systems. What he found made his blood run cold. Elevate Consulting wasn't just a boutique firm helping companies optimize operations. It was a sophisticated front, a Trojan horse designed to infiltrate corporate networks and extract intellectual property. Client lists included defense contractors, pharmaceutical companies, tech firms developing cutting-edge AI. And Morrison Global, the 84-year-old William Morrison's legacy company, sat at the center of it all. Marcus's phone buzzed at 11 p.m. Unknown number. He almost ignored it, then remembered the email, the warning, the sense that larger forces were in motion. Mr. Martinez? The voice was gravelly, aged but sharp. This is William Morrison. I believe we need to talk about your wife's company, and I believe we need to talk tonight. There's a coffee shop on Charles Street, the one that stays open late. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Come alone, and Marcus, bring everything you've found. Your country may depend on it. The line went dead. Marcus sat in darkness, his monitors casting blue light across his face. Elena's laughter from her celebration dinner still echoing in his memory. In his inbox, another email arrived from the Rhode Island contact. They're planning to disappear to Hawaii next month with everything they've stolen. Morrison knows. Trust him. He's one of the good ones. Marcus stood, grabbed his encrypted backup drive, and headed into the November night. His marriage was ending. He understood that now with crystal certainty. But something much larger was beginning. Something that would require every skill he possessed and reserves of courage he wasn't sure he had. It's okay to feel scared when your world fractures, he told himself, stepping into the cold. Sometimes breaking is how the light gets in. William Morrison sat in the corner booth of the Charles Street coffee shop, a man who'd built empires but dressed like a retired schoolteacher in flannel and corduroys. His 84 years showed in the weathered lines of his face, but his eyes held the sharpness of someone who'd spent 6 decades reading boardrooms and battlefields alike. He rose when Marcus entered, extending a hand that gripped with surprising strength. "Thank you for coming," Morrison said, his voice carrying the weight of unspoken urgency. "I know your world just collapsed. Mine's been crumbling for 6 months, and your wife has been holding the sledgehammer." Marcus slid into the booth, his encrypted drive clutched like a lifeline. Around them, late-night students typed on laptops, oblivious to the conversation about to unfold. Morrison ordered 2 black coffees from a passing server, then leaned forward, his hands folded on the scarred wooden table. "I'm not here about the acquisition offer, son. That was bait, the hook we needed to reel in a much bigger fish. Your wife's company has been systematically stealing technology from Morrison Global for 8 months. Defense contracts, AI systems, satellite encryption protocols. Information that in the wrong hands could compromise national security." The words hung between them like smoke. Marcus felt his professional instincts engage, pushing past the personal devastation. "How long have you known?" Morrison's smile held no humor. "We suspected something was wrong when our research and development timelines kept getting leaked to competitors. Small things at first, then larger breaches. We brought in the NSA's counterintelligence division from Fort Meade, Maryland, and the FBI's cybercrimes unit from D.C. They traced the intrusions back to Elevate Consulting, but we needed proof, and more importantly, we needed to understand the full scope of the operation." Marcus opened his laptop, angling the screen so Morrison could see. "I found communication logs between Elena and investors in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. They're linked to a Chinese tech conglomerate, Tianwei Industries. The meetings started 9 months ago, right after Elevate landed your company as a client." Morrison nodded slowly, his expression grave. "Cameron Bennett, her partner, he's not just a businessman. MIT graduate, computer science, specialization in network infiltration. He was recruited by Chinese intelligence while still at Cambridge, Massachusetts, groomed for years. Your wife, Marcus, I don't think she started out knowing what she was part of, but somewhere along the way, she made a choice." The betrayal layered itself in Marcus's mind, personal and professional violations intertwining. "The anonymous email I received this morning, the one from Rhode Island. Who sent it?" Morrison pulled out his phone, scrolling through messages. "Sarah Chun, former Elevate employee. She discovered discrepancies in the company's contracts, found encrypted files she wasn't supposed to see. When she confronted Cameron, he threatened her family. She fled to Newport, been feeding us information through back channels. She sent you that email because we needed you to come to this conclusion yourself, to understand what you were seeing through your own investigation. You're the key to everything, Marcus." Marcus felt the weight of Morrison's words settling on his shoulders. "Why me? You have federal agencies involved, resources I can't imagine." The older man's expression softened, something paternal emerging beneath the corporate titan exterior. "Because you have legitimate access to Elevate systems through your marriage. Elena's been careless at home, hasn't she? Uses her work laptop on your shared network, takes calls in your presence, stores passwords in obvious places. She doesn't see you as a threat anymore, if she ever did. That blindness is our advantage. We need you to go deeper, to document everything, to be our inside witness when this goes to trial. The server returned with their coffees, and both men paused, sipping the bitter brew while Marcus processed the magnitude of what was being asked. You want me to spy on my wife? Morrison shook his head firmly. I want you to protect your country from people who've weaponized corporate espionage. I want you to help us stop technology that could save lives from ending up in hands that would use it to take lives. And yes, Marcus, I want you to do what's right even when it costs you everything. That's what separates good men from comfortable ones. Marcus thought about Elena celebrating her $33 million offer, about Cameron's smug face in those photographs, about 7 years of marriage built on what now seemed like calculated deception. What's the endgame? Morrison pulled out a folder, sliding it across the table. The acquisition offer is real, but it comes with conditions. Due diligence, full system audits, background checks on all principals. We're bringing you in as our external cybersecurity consultant, the official reason being that we want an independent assessment. Elena will have to give you access. We'll have to watch you examine everything. She won't be able to refuse without raising suspicions. Inside the folder, Marcus found a contract offering him $250,000 for 6 months of consulting work with Morrison Global. His annual freelance income barely topped $70,000. This is more than generous. Morrison's eyes held something like respect. This is compensation for what you're about to lose. Your marriage, your privacy, possibly your safety. Cameron Bennett isn't just a hacker, Marcus. He's connected to people who've made problems disappear. The law firm he's contacted for your divorce, based in Connecticut, they've represented 3 corporations later indicted for espionage. They're not planning a simple divorce. They're planning to silence you, to use legal proceedings to restrict what you can testify about, to paint you as a disgruntled spouse making false accusations. Fear, cold and sharp, cut through Marcus's chest. Morrison reached across the table, his weathered hand covering Marcus's younger one. You've got this, son. I didn't build Morrison Global by being reckless with people's lives. We have FBI protection arranged, safe houses if needed, legal teams from Seattle, Washington, already building your defense. But I need to know you're in, completely in, because once we start this, there's no pulling back. Elena and Cameron are planning to vanish to Hawaii next month with everything they've stolen. We have one chance to stop them, and that chance is you. Marcus looked at the contract, at Morrison's steady gaze, at his own reflection in the dark coffee. Somewhere across town, Elena was probably in Cameron's arms, celebrating their impending wealth and freedom, never imagining that her husband, the man she'd dismissed and diminished, was about to become the architect of their downfall. It's okay to feel overwhelmed, Marcus thought, remembering the encouraging words his mother used to speak. Sometimes the hardest path is the only honorable one. He picked up the pen Morrison offered and signed his name. Tell me everything I need to know, Marcus said quietly, and tell me how we're going to stop them. The next 6 weeks transformed Marcus into someone he barely recognized, a man living 2 lives with surgical precision. By day, he played the role of the supportive husband, attending Morrison Global meetings beside Elena, nodding pleasantly as she presented Elevate's operational frameworks, while he quietly documented every system vulnerability, every encrypted file transfer, every suspicious communication protocol. By night, he became something else entirely, a digital forensics specialist tunneling through layers of deception that stretched from their Baltimore home to server farms across 8 states. Elena never suspected, too intoxicated by her impending wealth and too distracted by Cameron's constant presence to notice her husband's newfound purpose. The breakthrough came from Newark, New Jersey, where Marcus traced Elevate's seed funding to a shell corporation called Vertex Holdings. The money trail led through 3 offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands before terminating at a Beijing-based investment firm with documented ties to Chinese military intelligence. Elena had told him her family money funded the startup, a lie so casual she'd repeated it at dinner parties without hesitation. Marcus sat in his home office at 2 in the morning, his wife asleep upstairs after another late celebration dinner, and watched financial transactions scroll across his monitor like damning poetry. $2.7 million, laundered through legitimate-looking consulting contracts, all designed to purchase one thing. access to American technological secrets. Sarah Chun, the Rhode Island whistleblower, became an unexpected ally through encrypted messaging. She'd worked as Elevate's office manager for 14 months before discovering the truth, and her photographic memory proved invaluable. Cameron recruited Elena specifically. Sarah wrote one December evening. He researched her ambition, her marriage troubles, her vulnerabilities. I found the psychological profile he commissioned. Marcus. They targeted you too. Needed a husband credible enough to provide cover, but dismissible enough to ignore. I'm so sorry. Marcus read the words 3 times, each pass stripping away another layer of his remaining illusions. Elena hadn't just fallen out of love with him. She'd been guided there by someone who understood exactly how to exploit her desires. The Massachusetts connection deepened the conspiracy's roots. Cameron Bennett had maintained relationships with 7 former MIT colleagues, each now positioned at major technology firms across the country. Marcus, working with Morrison's counterintelligence team in Fort Meade, identified a pattern. Elevate would approach these companies offering consulting services. Cameron would leverage his MIT connections to establish trust, and within months, proprietary information would begin flowing outward. It was brilliant in its simplicity, hiding industrial espionage behind the mundane machinery of corporate consulting. One colleague now worked at a pharmaceutical company developing cancer treatments, another at a defense contractor building drone technology, a third at an AI research lab pioneering autonomous systems. California provided the smoking gun Marcus needed. A cybersecurity researcher in Silicon Valley, monitoring dark web marketplaces for stolen data, flagged a file set labeled Morrison Sentinel Complete, appearing for sale. The asking price, $15 million in cryptocurrency. The Sentinel project was Morrison Global's most classified development, a satellite encryption system designed to protect military communications from foreign interception. Marcus traced the posting back to a server in Palo Alto, then followed the digital fingerprints through 7 proxy networks until they terminated at a laptop registered to Cameron Bennett. He documented everything, screenshots and network logs and metadata timestamps, building an evidentiary chain that even the most skeptical prosecutor couldn't dismiss. Elena grew increasingly agitated as January arrived, her patience with the acquisition's due diligence process wearing thin. "Why is this taking so long?" she demanded one evening, pacing their bedroom while Marcus pretended to read. "Morrison's team keeps requesting more documentation, more access, more everything. It's like they don't trust us." Marcus looked up from his book, keeping his voice neutral. "It's a $33 million deal, Elena. Of course they're being thorough. These things take time." She turned on him, her expression sharp with something that looked almost like fear. "What would you know about deals like this? You're a freelance IT guy who makes $70,000 a year. This is the big leagues, Marcus. This is real business." The contempt in her voice should have hurt, but Marcus felt only a distant sadness, like mourning someone who died years ago. "You're right," he said quietly. "I don't know much about big business, but I know about doing the right thing, and I know about being honest with the people you love. I guess those are different skill sets." Elena stared at him for a long moment, something flickering in her eyes that might have been guilt or might have been calculation. Then she grabbed her phone and left, off to another late meeting with Cameron that would last until dawn. The New Hampshire evidence painted the clearest picture of intent. Morrison's FBI contacts obtained surveillance footage from the Portsmouth meetings, 12 encounters over 4 months between Elena, Cameron, and representatives from Tianwei Industries. Audio recordings, captured through legal wiretaps authorized by a federal judge, revealed discussions of timeline acceleration, extraction protocols, and payment structures. "We deliver Sentinel by February 15th, Cameron's voice said on one recording. "They transfer the final payment. We close the Morrison deal to avoid suspicion, then we're gone. Hawaii property is ready. New identities are arranged, the whole package." Elena's response came clearly. "And Marcus? What about my husband?" Cameron's laughter made Marcus's stomach turn. "Your soon-to-be ex-husband will be too buried in divorce proceedings to be a problem. My Connecticut attorneys are specialists in making sure disgruntled spouses look like liars." Marcus delivered the New Hampshire recordings to William Morrison on a freezing January morning, meeting in a secure conference room at Morrison Global headquarters. The 84-year-old veteran listened with his eyes closed, his weathered face betraying nothing until the recording ended. "You've done remarkable work, son," Morrison said finally. "We have enough now to move forward. The FBI wants to make arrests next week. Catch them before they can run. Are you ready for what comes next?" Marcus thought about his empty marriage, his compromised home, his wife who'd become a stranger engaged in treason. "I've been ready since the moment you shook my hand in that coffee shop." Morrison stood, walking to the window overlooking Baltimore's harbor. "There's something you need to know. The Hawaii property they purchased, we've had agents watching it for 3 weeks. They found evidence of 3 other couples, all former spouses of corporate targets, all disappeared under suspicious circumstances. Elena and Cameron, they've done this before. You're not their first Marcus. You're just the first one who fought back." The words settled in the room like snow, cold and suffocating. Marcus felt a chill that had nothing to do with winter. "You're saying I could have disappeared?" Morrison turned, his expression holding both respect and sorrow. "I'm saying you still might, if we're not careful. But I'm also saying you're stronger than they ever anticipated, and that strength is going to bring them down. It's okay to feel afraid. It's okay to wonder if you're doing the right thing. But know this. You've already saved lives they would have endangered, and you've protected secrets that keep our country safe. That matters, Marcus. You matter." 18 months later, Marcus stood outside the federal courthouse in Seattle, Washington, watching morning rain paint the city in shades of gray that matched his memories of that final night in Baltimore. The arrest had come swiftly, FBI agents arriving at their home on January 23rd, while Elena packed for what she believed was a business trip to Hawaii. Marcus still remembered her face when she saw him standing beside William Morrison in their living room. The way comprehension and rage warred across her features before hardening into something cold and calculating. Cameron Bennett had been arrested simultaneously at his Harbor East penthouse, his MIT genius insufficient to anticipate the trap he'd walked into. The Connecticut lawyers tried their theatrical best to paint Marcus as a vindictive husband fabricating evidence, but cryptocurrency transaction logs and encrypted communications carried more weight than character assassination. The trial had drawn international attention. Corporate espionage cases rarely achieved such spectacular scope. Elena and Cameron faced 63 counts between them: conspiracy to commit economic espionage, theft of trade secrets, wire fraud, money laundering, and violations of the Economic Espionage Act that carried potential sentences of 15 years per count. The prosecution, led by a team from the Department of Justice's National Security Division, had built their case on Marcus's documentation like constructing a cathedral from individual stones. Every screenshot, every network log, every traced transaction became part of an overwhelming narrative of betrayal that transcended personal boundaries and entered the realm of national security threats. Marcus had testified for 3 days the previous week, his voice steady as he walked the jury through the technical details of how Elevate Consulting had infiltrated Morrison Global Systems. Defense attorneys tried to rattle him, suggesting his evidence was tainted by personal vendetta, but Marcus remained calm, letting the data speak for itself. "I loved my wife," he'd said during cross-examination, his eyes meeting Elena's across the courtroom. "But I love my country more, and I believe in truth more than I believe in protecting someone who chose deception. The evidence isn't about our marriage. It's about what she and Cameron Bennett chose to do with access and trust." The courtroom today buzzed with anticipation as closing arguments prepared to begin. Marcus sat in the gallery beside William Morrison, who'd attended every day of the trial despite his age and the long flight from Baltimore. The old veteran had become something like a father figure, checking on Marcus weekly, ensuring he had support through the divorce proceedings that ran parallel to the criminal trial, offering wisdom born from decades of navigating complicated moral landscapes. "However this ends," Morrison whispered as they waited for the judge to enter, "you did the right thing. Never doubt that, son. Never let their lies make you question your truth." Elena entered through the side door, her designer suits replaced by conservative courtroom attire that couldn't disguise the weight she'd lost or the hardness that prison had etched into her features. Cameron followed, his MIT arrogance dimmed but not extinguished, his eyes scanning the room with the calculations of someone still seeking angles and advantages. When Elena's gaze found Marcus, something flickered there. Was it regret or simply rage at being caught? he'd never know. They'd spoken only once since her arrest, a brief conversation in a federal building conference room where she'd tried to explain, to justify, to make him understand her choices. "You were never enough, Marcus," she'd said, her voice brittle. "Cameron offered me a life bigger than anything you could imagine, and I wanted it more than I wanted you." The prosecution's closing argument lasted 90 minutes, a methodical dismantling of the defense's attempts to minimize the defendant's actions. Assistant U.S. Attorney Jennifer Zhao, a woman whose reputation for prosecuting complex financial crimes preceded her, walked the jury through the evidence with surgical precision. "This isn't a story about a failed marriage," she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the courtroom. "This is a story about two individuals who weaponized corporate consulting to steal American technological secrets and sell them to foreign adversaries." The defendant, Elena Martinez, didn't stumble into this conspiracy. She embraced it, nurtured it, and profited from it while hiding behind the legitimacy her marriage provided. Defense counsel countered with appeals to sympathy, suggesting Elena had been manipulated by Cameron's superior technical knowledge and criminal experience, painting her as a victim of his schemes rather than an equal partner. But the New Hampshire recordings destroyed that narrative, Elena's voice clear and willing as she discussed timelines and extraction protocols and payment structures. The jury, 8 women and 4 men ranging from a retired teacher to a software engineer to a Navy veteran, listened with expressions that revealed little but suggested much. Marcus watched them watching Elena, saw them weighing her choices against their own moral frameworks, and felt something like peace settling over him. Cameron Bennett's defense proved even less convincing, his attorneys attempting to argue that corporate espionage didn't rise to the level of national security threat, that the information stolen was merely commercial advantage rather than classified intelligence. Federal testimony from NSA officials and defense contractors demolished that argument within minutes, explaining in clear terms how Morrison Global's Sentinel encryption system protected military communications in conflict zones, how its compromise could cost soldiers' lives, how technology theft represented warfare by other means. Cameron's MIT credentials, once his greatest asset, became evidence of his capability and intent, proof that he understood exactly what he was stealing and why it mattered. The jury deliberated for 7 hours across 2 days. Marcus spent that time walking Seattle's waterfront, watching ferries cross gray water, thinking about the man he'd been 18 months ago and the man he'd become. The divorce had finalized 6 months earlier, Elena signing papers from detention rather than fighting what she knew she'd lost. The Baltimore house sold quickly, Marcus using his share to relocate to Seattle, where Morrison Global had offered him a permanent position heading their cybersecurity division. The work was challenging, meaningful, a way to transform his painful expertise into something protective and good. Sarah Chun had visited twice, the Rhode Island whistleblower finding her own courage through Marcus's example, now working with federal agencies to identify other espionage fronts hiding behind consulting firm facades. The jury returned their verdict on a Thursday afternoon, the courtroom packed with journalists, federal agents, corporate representatives, and citizens who understood they were witnessing something significant. Marcus sat between William Morrison and Sarah Chun, his hands steady, his breathing calm, as the forewoman stood to deliver their decision. 63 counts, 63 guilty verdicts, the words falling like hammer strikes that sealed Elena and Cameron's fates. Elena's face crumbled, the mask finally breaking to reveal something human beneath, while Cameron simply closed his eyes, his calculations finally exhausted. The judge set sentencing for 6 weeks later, but indicated the guidelines suggested Elena would receive 12 to 15 years while Cameron faced 25 to 30, their conspiracy's scope demanding consequences that matched its betrayal. Outside the courthouse, rain had stopped, leaving Seattle washed clean and gleaming. Marcus stood before assembled media, William Morrison's hand on his shoulder, and spoke briefly about why ordinary people must choose courage when faced with extraordinary corruption. "I didn't want this fight," he said, his voice carrying across the crowded plaza. "I wanted a simple life, a happy marriage, work that mattered. But when I discovered the truth, I had a choice: protect my comfort or protect something larger than myself. We all face moments like that, moments when doing right costs us everything we thought we wanted. I'm here to tell you that the cost is worth it, that integrity matters more than convenience, that one person standing up can stop conspiracies that seemed unstoppable. Marcus's journey reminds us that betrayal, while devastating, can become the crucible that forges our greatest strength. When Elena chose deception, she unknowingly chose to reveal Marcus's true character, his capacity for courage, his commitment to principles larger than personal pain. We all carry the potential for such heroism, waiting for circumstances that demand we become more than we imagined possible. It's okay to feel broken when trust shatters. It's okay to grieve what you've lost, but never forget that from those fragments, you can build something stronger, something true. Your story isn't over when others betray you. It's just beginning to reveal who you were meant to become. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If this story moved you, please like this video, subscribe to our channel for more inspiring tales, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, and comment below with your thoughts. Your engagement helps us continue bringing stories that matter to audiences who need them. Until next time, remember, you've got this, and your courage matters more than you know.